The first reading that we got this morning is from Psalm 49. Psalm 49. We're going to be reading the whole of that song. And this is what it says. Hear this, all you peoples. Listen, all you who live in this earth, both low and high, rich and poor alike. My mouth will speak words of wisdom. The meditation of my heart will give you understanding. I will turn my ear to a proverb. With the harp I will expound my riddle. Why should I fear when evil days come, when evil deceivers surround me, those who trust in their wealth and boast of their great riches? No one can redeem the life of another or give to God a ransom for them. The ransom for a life is costly. No payment is ever enough, so that they should live on forever and not see decay. For all can see that the wise die, that the foolish and the senseless also perish, leaving their wealth to others. Their tombs will remain their houses forever, their dwellings for endless generations, though they had named lands after themselves. People, despite their wealth, do not endure. They are like the beasts that perish. This is the fate of those who trust in themselves and of their followers who approve of their sayings. They are like sheep that are destined to die. Death will be their shepherd. But the upright will prevail over them in the morning. Their forms will decay in the grave, far from their princely mansions. But God will redeem me from the realm of the dead. He will surely take me to himself. Do not be overawed when others grow rich, when their splendour of their houses increases. For they will take nothing with them when they die. Their splendour will not descend with them. Though they will live, they count themselves blessed, and people praise you when you prosper. They will join those who have gone before them, who will never again see the light of life. People who have wealth but lack understanding are like the beasts that perish.
The second reading comes from good old Luke, chapter 12, beginning at verse 13, and it can be found on page 1044 in the Church Bible. The parable of the rich fool. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God."
Morning, everyone. Today we are thinking about work. We've been in this little mini-series called Cultural Queries. A couple of weeks ago we thought about the news media, and that was a lovely time. Last week we thought about healthcare, health, life and death, and that was a lovely time. And now we're thinking about work. Don't we love thinking about work? You've got the weekend off, come here to church and think about work. We have a love-hate relationship with work. We want to uphold it and honour what it is and honour workers and all this sort of stuff. But also, work is really frustrating. Both of these are true at the same time. We love it so much, we love to complain about it, you could say. How you been? Been busy. Doing what? Working hard to make a living. And that makes you a, correct, working class man. We want to uphold these hard workers, but at the same time, we're kind of complaining about work. So here's a question. Who here works? Who here works? We've got a couple of workers. Of course, it's a trick question. I set you up. I'm sorry about that. Let me illustrate why it is a trick question with my employment history. So first of all, I was a cherry picker a little while ago. And then I upgraded myself and I became a tomato picker. That's me on the left there, picking tomatoes in the field. My mum got me a job. I worked with other Filipinos. It was great. Cash in hand. You know the kind. And then I got an upgrade again. And then I worked in a boarding house as a boarding house warden or housemaster, looking after the kids. And it, pretty prestigious school as you can see. It was a pretty good job. And then as I was studying, I worked as an assistant in nursing. This is me and my cohort there, Sally in the background, there's Bob up the back there, and Jan next to me. We're all good mates. And then while I was working in the boarding house, studying and working as an assistant nurse, I also worked as a night shift cleaner at the Bathurst 1000. I have seen things for which I would not wish any of you to ever see in your whole life. The depravity of mankind. Again, the depravity of man, really. I only cleaned the men's toilets. Then I graduated, became a registered nurse. There's me. I worked in the general ward. I worked in mental health wards. I worked in the rehab wards, and then I worked, not in any ward, I worked on the COVID hotline as a triage nurse. And who hasn't done this? I worked for Ray Trappel as a labourer. We've all been there. I should have asked at the start, who hasn't worked for Ray Trappel? That's what I should. Your time will come. Your time will come. And now, of course, not now. Then I worked as an assistant in telehealth for a startup company, and I worked in connecting people with doctors. And now I work as the assistant minister here. Something like that. Now, those are all photos of me working in my places of employment. All the things that I've done for money. But do they represent all the ways that I have worked? No, they do not. Anyone here in high school? Anyone in high school here? We've got a few people in high school. Well, like you, I worked intensely for 3 straight months as a high school student before the HSC. I also worked in university periodically, studying. I volunteered in churches throughout that whole time. I maintain currently with Jemima a theological website and blog. I'm at home cleaning the dishes, taking care of the garden, not that you can tell. I'm working hard in all these different ways, and I get paid for none of them. Got paid for none of those things. All I want to illustrate, of course, is that many of us will work a 40-hour industrial standard week in paid jobs, but then we go home and we spend 20, 30 hours working, unpaid, but we only call one of them work. Seems odd. I think we need a better definition of what work is that encapsulates it all. And then, once we figure out what work really is, then we need to tackle the thing that we're all really struggling with, especially younger people coming up in the workplaces, which is, what's the point? Why do we even work? Why am I grinding away all the time? What's the point? So as we think about work, we're going to think about those 2 simple things, but I think they will put us in good stead for what's ahead. What is work, and why do we work? What is work? Like I mentioned, if work is the thing that we call the job we get paid for, that's what it is. Well, then what about mothers or volunteers? What about students? What about those people doing all the chores that we do at home? A lot of people think of work only as a job that we get paid for, but a bunch of work, of course, we do not get paid for. The jobs that we do that we don't get paid for, they are super important, even if we don't get paid for them. And so I think we need to think differently about what work means. In the Bible, there's all kinds of different work. The way that we think of work, there are fishermen. Who were fishermen? The disciples. Disciples were fishermen. There were people that made things, tents and carpentry. There were teachers. This is the kind of work that 2 Thessalonians 3 is talking about, I think, which Mark read a little bit to us before. You surely know, this is coming from the CEV today. You surely know that you should follow our example, Paul writing. We didn't waste our time loafing, what a good word, loafing, and we didn't accept food from anyone without paying for it. We didn't want to be a burden to any of you. So night and day we worked as hard as we could. We had the right not to work, to be paid for ministry, but we wanted to set an example for you. We also gave you the rule that if you don't work, you don't eat. Imagine that rule in your house. Who would like that rule in your house? Any kids like that rule? Any kids operate off that rule? Got a couple of mothers that love that rule? Yes. If you don't work, you don't eat. I think there'll be a family discussion at the dinner table tonight. Sorry, kids. I think we understand what this passage is talking about intuitively. This passage is talking about the thing that you do to get money so you can feed your family. You can pay for clothes. You can pay for a house and shelter. But in the Bible, there is another passage, earlier in the Bible, a very special passage that speaks of work more highly than I think any other passage, just about, more highly. It's the kind of work done at home. Proverbs 33, this is the work, this passage celebrates a mother and a wife working at home. Listen to what it writes. She's like a sailing ship that brings food from across the sea. Kids, if you ever wonder where your food comes from, that's what it's getting at. She gets up before daylight to prepare food for her family and for her servants. She knows how to buy land and how to plant a vineyard, and she always works hard. She knows when to buy or sell, and she stays busy until late at night. She spins her own cloth to make clothes, that is, and she helps the poor and the needy. Her family have warm clothing, and so she doesn't worry when it snows. She does her own sewing, and everything she wears is beautiful. She makes clothes to sell to the shop owners. She takes good care of her family and is never lazy. Whose mum is like this? Whose mum is like this? You're all in trouble. Are you kidding? Yes, every mother is like this. Everyone's hand is up. That's right. Whose wife is like this? Oh. Yeah, again, lots of people in trouble. Passages like this, what are they getting at? They've got a very broad understanding of what work is. So what is it? Here's a good definition. Any activity by which you are providing for the needs of yourself or others. I think that's what work is. Being a musician is not just work when you're working at the pub for 2 hours playing music. You're working 4 hours a day practicing. Not getting paid for that. You're working 4 hours a day practicing. The garden and the chores and taking care of the kids and fixing the bathroom again and renovating the house and paying your bills, they're all work, even if you don't get paid for them. They're just as much work as if you were paid to do them for someone else. When you go to school and you work hard to learn all the things that you are given by the teachers, when you come home and you have homework, if you're a kid doing this, you're someone who is working. You're working. That's your job as a teenager. Of course, what job is the hardest? Teenager, please tell me which one of these 4 is the hardest. Putting the dishes away, taking the bins out, feeding the dog, cleaning your bedroom. What one? Whoa, kids. Oh, the kids' experience might be very different. Taking the bins out is insane. What's the worst one? What's the hardest one? I respect that. 1 to 4. 1 to 4, yes. When you are doing those chores, it is work. And it is, I get it kids, it is hard work. Putting out the bins, kill me now. Teenagers should unionize, create a movement, because it's hard work and it's unpaid and it's unfair. That's all work. That's why all unions exist. When you come to church, you're all here, Sunday by Sunday, through the week, you're helping, you're teaching, you're praying, you're supporting, you're volunteering in the crèche with the kids' church when kids' activities start up in the term. All the other tasks you do, hosting the lunches and putting on the morning tea, you're working hard. When you're out there at the community events for Easter and Christmas and these other things, doing carols, or you're talking to others over a beer at the pub, these things are called the work of the Lord in the Bible, the work of the Lord. Work is more than the thing you do to earn money. However, because our society values money and paid work so much, sometimes we don't appreciate unpaid work and unpaid workers. We don't value unpaid work and unpaid workers. So if you're the kind of person that does a lot of unpaid work and unpaid workers, you may feel undervalued. And maybe you fell for the lie as well. Maybe you undervalue yourself. Don't do that. First point, what's work? Anything by which you are providing for yourself or others. I think that is a very big, broad definition which encapsulates what work really is, what we think it is. Better that definition than the cultural definition, I think. Second point, why do we work? Thinking about why we work is also really important. Most people don't just work to buy the basics. Most of us here don't just work to pay for food and clothing and housing. Instead, most people work for more than that, like nice things and fun activities that help us live a certain standard of living, a certain quality of life. Over the years, since the 1900s, more people started earning more money from more of their jobs, which meant they had a lot more extra cool things, not just necessities. And now we're very used to thinking that way, that work doesn't just pay for food, clothing, and a house, it pays for a certain kind of life, all the extra things. Like this. Kids, can you tell me what I'm playing in this photo as I'm going off to the city to do some work? What am I doing? Yes, Bubba, what am I playing? What is it? A Nintendo. That's right, it's a Nintendo Switch, to be specific. You might think this is a life necessity. It is not. It is a luxury, kids. We've gotten used to luxury though, of course, and you might think, well, let's have a go at luxury. But that's not the case. That's not the case. Luxury is a good thing. Luxury is a fine thing. Let's look at this graph. A long time ago, this graph starts at the 1800s, long time ago, people had to work really hard, harder than any of us work now, really hard to get the basic things. Like food, place to live, clothing. And lots of people lived in poverty. See that red line across the bottom? That's all the people that were in poverty. So from the 1800s, there's about 1 billion people. 90% in poverty, 10% not in poverty. That's unimaginable. 2015, look where we're at in 2015. Amazing, amazing. There are 7 times more the people in this world, and there is half the amount of people in poverty. If there are 8 billion people in this world, if this graph was kept going the way it was going, there would be 7 billion people in poverty. Isn't that amazing? We don't work anymore just to supply our basic, fundamental needs. That's not how we think about work very often at all. we just expect work to just give us all those things. Just expect it to pay for all those things. Nowadays, we struggle with something different. We would find it unimaginable to live on minimum wage, $43,000 a year, even including all the cost and rise of living and all this sort of stuff. Could you imagine living on $43,000 a year? One worker for your family. Very hard to imagine. Very hard to imagine. But back in the 1800s, that's really not that long ago. Really back before 1950, really not that long ago. That was what it was like. But today we expect a certain standard of living, a certain quality of life. We expect our jobs and our work to just supply those basic needs. Now, why am I telling you all that? Because work isn't really about any of that, but we think it is. Work isn't about earning money just so that you buy the things you need, nor is work about earning enough money to buy the things you need and the things you like. The real reason for work goes beyond that. That's what you do, but the meaning is deeper and further than that. Work has a bigger purpose. Whether we work in a simple job or a fancy job, or whether we get paid or we're unpaid, the reason we work is for the glory of God and for the love and service of others. And the way you glorify God is to love and serve others. That's what work is really about. As Mark read for us at the beginning of church, do your work willingly as though you were serving the Lord himself, and not just for earthly masters. In fact, the Lord Christ is the one you are really serving, and you know that he will reward you. Whatever you do, you're working for the Lord. And if you're not working for the Lord in whatever you do, well, that's when all our troubles start. When we use our work to love and serve others, just as God loves and serves us in the Lord Jesus, we are honouring God when we return that to him in praise of him. Lots of people today, the reason we're thinking about cultural queries is because lots of people today in our workplace, in our families, in the broader society, say that you should find your meaning and purpose in your job, like it's there. But really, a job cannot provide you with meaning or purpose. That's asking too much of a job. It's simply not there. The more you look, the less you'll find of it. It's not there. Your meaning and purpose is already given to you from God to honour and love and serve others, and honour and love and serve him. And that means that we bring our purpose to our work. We don't get it from our work, we bring it to our work, whatever our work is. You show this purpose in everything you do. That's the big difference. That is what will set you apart. As the Bible talks about a holy people, set apart. You bring your purpose to work. Work is not easy though, and there are, I will say, 4 reasons for that. First, it's cursed. That's Genesis 3. The challenge of thorns and thistles are prevalent all the time, which is why we kind of love work, but we kind of hate work at the same time. It reminds us that the world isn't perfect, it isn't as God intended it, and that we have a broken relationship with God. We do not glorify him often, and we need to return to him. Secondly, work is hard, perhaps because even though we're Christian, we're looking for meaning and purpose in work instead of bringing our meaning and purpose to work. Perhaps that's what we're doing. And that might be why it's difficult. And thirdly, I think this is the case. This is going to be the biggest reason we struggle, is because most of the people that we will work with don't understand what work is about. They might be looking, your bosses and employees and all this sort of thing, they might be looking for meaning in their work, and they get very frustrated and upset when they don't find it in their work. or they choose a meaning for work which it's not for, like getting money for ourselves and getting more possessions, which is what our first 2 Bible readings were about. They're living just to grow their capital, and they are terribly frustrated and upset. And you have to work with them. That makes our job difficult. And what can we do? We must simply love and serve them. And fourthly, finally, this is specifically for the Christian. We might find work tough as Christians because we wonder how our job, you're a plumber, you're an electrician, or you're a teacher or whatever else, or you're gardening, we wonder how that work fits into God's big plan. How does it contribute to growing God's kingdom? But even if our work doesn't necessarily contribute to God's kingdom, that is to say, people becoming Christians, does it matter? I think it still matters. It's still very important. Not everything has to last forever to be important, such as marriage. Only for this age. But it is very important. So knowing your purpose, knowing that it is to glorify God and to serve others, that will help address all these problems. Which is why it matters why we work. Well, let's wrap up. Quick recap. What is work? An activity by which you are providing for the needs of yourself or others. And why do we work? We work for the glory of God, to love and serve others for his glory. That's why we work. As the band come up, let me end with these words from Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12 in the CEV. Never give up. Eagerly follow the Holy Spirit and serve the Lord. Let your hope make you glad. Be patient in time of trouble and never stop praying. Take care of God's needy people and welcome strangers into your home. That's a lot of good work there. Amen.